To get the Big Buck Registry after show and other exclusive content right now, go to patreon.com/Big Buck Registry. Today on Deer Hunt.
We are the scientists behind it. We don't have to go hire somebody to put together our food plots for us. Eric puts the correct ratios into the bag so that when your plots start coming up, everything that's supposed to be in that bag comes up. I've had other products on the market that I've put out in the past. Some of the plants that are stated on the bag don't come up because whoever designed them didn't think about the ratios as far as competition amongst plants.
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 296, Rackology, Spring Food Plots, Kill Plots, Supplements, and COVID-19. Support for the Big Buck Registry and the Deer Hunt Podcast comes from -33 Merino Wool Layering System, keeping you warm on the coldest days while staying breathable and wicking away moisture on the wet ones. Rackology, everything you need in one bag. Now available at Rural King and Orslin Farm and Home storefronts or online at www.rackology.org. Grizzly Ears, the most advanced engineered wireless earbuds for the outdoors. Covert scouting cameras, remote cameras for hunting, wildlife, and security. Grizz friction wood calls, custom-made calls that sound as good as they look. Mountain Deer Taxidermy. If you can dream it, we can make it. www.mountaindeertaxidermy.com. And Big Buck merch. You can get cool, high-quality Big Buck t-shirts, long-sleeve t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. And show support for this podcast by visiting bigbuckmerch.com. That's bigbuckmerch.com.
Hey, this is Charles Byram, deer hunting from California all the way to Iowa. You're about to listen to another amazing episode of my favorite deer hunting podcast, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey, this is Dan Kaufman. I shot the Kaufman buck. You're about to listen to another episode of my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
I'm James Blankenbeckler from Open Season TV, and you're about to listen to my favorite podcast, the Big Buck Registry.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen and fellow predators. My name is Jay, and thank you for tuning in to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. For Dusty Phillips and Jim Keller and the entire staff here at the Big Buck Registry, welcome to the show. There are a couple things I'd like you to do for us if you could. If you would, please check us out on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and leave us a review. With your help, we're going to try and push this show up the iTunes charts. I know we have a lot of listeners out there, and I need you to take some action. I need you to leave a review and subscribe to the show. If you do subscribe, that'll give you access and notification each and every week that a new show is released. You can also access this show in its entirety on YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, "Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry." It's all right there for you to access on demand at your fingertips. Regarding the harness program, we're out of harnesses. We need your help. Anybody that has spare harnesses, please send an email to jay@bigbuckregistry.com. Yes, we're dealing with COVID-19. Our world is upside down. However, planting spring food plot seems to be an acceptable form of social distancing. So we turn to our good friends Eric Fitzgerald and Jason Obermiller from the seed, nutritional, supplement, and fertilizer company called Rackology to discuss how to do it right. When should you plant? When is the soil moisture and temperature just right? Should soil testing be done? What about fertilizer? Where should my next food plot go? We answer all these questions and more on this podcast. We'll get to our interview with the guys from Rackology in just one moment. But before we do, let's hear from our friends at -33 Merino Wool Products and Jim Keller with the Deer News. My experience started with a visit to the -33 headquarters in Ashland, New Hampshire, for a tour of the warehouse and factory, followed by an interview with John Glidden, the owner and CEO. John is a straight-shooting New Hampshire Yankee, if ever there was one, and that straight-shooting attitude reflects in his product. It's high-quality stuff that does exactly what the company says it will do. After a steady hike on a cold November day up the backside of a steep New Hampshire ridge, with the sun setting and the temps dropping, I wasn't soaked with sweat. Because of the -33 merino wool base layer, I was comfortably warm and dry and itch-free. Any perspiration was wicked away from my body, and my human scent was neutralized from the natural properties that the wool brings to the table. I was thankful that I was wearing that exact base layer when that dominant buck appeared. Rest assured, I'll be wearing my minus 33 merino wool base layer next year when the temperatures start to drop. I'd encourage you to check out minus 33 for yourself. Visit www.minus33.com. That's MINUS 33.com, and grab some base layers for the rest of this season or next. And please let them know you heard about them on the show by using the discount code BIGBUCK33 to get 10% off your next order.
Now here's Jim Keller with the deer news.
Our first story this week. Senate bill would drop deer baiting fine to $1. This story is from the Michigan Radio website and was reported by Rick Pluta. Governor Gretchen Whitmer vetoed a bill last year to end a ban on allowing hunters to use bait to attract deer. Republicans who disagree with that veto just made their next move. A new bill would allow the baiting ban to remain in place during the deer hunting season, but it would reduce the penalty for violations to $1. The Michigan Natural Resources Commission enacted the ban in 2018. Its purpose is to combat the spread of disease between animals where hunters place bait traps. Some hunters say that's a mistake and the state should let them use baiting to reduce the risk by further reducing the size of the deer herd. There's no word from the governor's office on whether she'd sign the legislation that's not very different from what she's already rejected. The bill does not say a violation of the ban will result in a fine, just that it may result in a fine. Dick's Sporting Goods pulling hunting gear from more than 440 more locations. This story is from the Fox News website and was reported by Michael Bartiromo. Dick's Sporting Goods has announced plans to remove the hunting departments from approximately 440 additional locations following a similar, albeit much smaller, effort last year. In a press release Tuesday, along with the company's fourth quarter earnings report, Dick's confirmed that it would be removing the hunting departments sometime in fiscal 2020, though there was no specific time frame announced. Dick's also declined to say which stores in particular would be affected. The company had previously removed guns and ammunition from 125 of its locations roughly 1 year ago, after Dick's first announced it would no longer be selling assault-style weapons at any of its locations in the wake of the tragic Parkland School shooting. The stores also raised the age of requirements for gun purchases to 21. At the same time, gun and ammunition manufacturers including O.F. Mossberg and Sons Incorporated and MKS Supply announced they would no longer be doing business with Dick's. These moves apparently had little effect on the company's sales, however, as the Dick's chairman and CEO reported strong fourth quarter results in the latest earnings report, as well as growth across each of the three primary categories of hardlines, apparel, and footwear. The company's shares also jumped 12.2% in Tuesday pre-market trading, Fox Business reported. A representative from Dick's Sporting Goods was not immediately available to comment. The company currently operates 726 stores in 47 states, as well as 94 Golf Galaxy locations and 27 Field & Stream stores. I knew he was trying to kill me. Fort Collins man fends off rabid mountain lion's attack. This story is from the Coloradoan website and was reported by Miles Blumhard. Randy Kirshen has spent nearly 20 years hunting and fishing in Colorado and had never seen a mountain lion in the wild. When he finally did, it was an arm length away from attacking him. All I keep remembering is that face and those beady eyes looking at me, the 57-year-old Kirshen said Monday while recovering from his injuries at his Fort Collins home, and I knew he was trying to kill me. Kirshen was cutting shower towels in the driveway of a customer's home on River Rim Road about 1:30 p.m. when UPS driver Alex Rodriguez pulled up for a delivery. The two men were talking and Kirshen was standing outside the truck while Rodriguez was inside the vehicle. That's when Kirshen noticed out of the corner of his eye what he first thought was a dog coming around the truck. Then he recognized the animal as a mountain lion. He said the cougar never slowed but instead picked up speed while crouching and then jumped up from about 2 or 3 feet from him and caught the right arm Kirshen instinctively raised to fend off the attack. His shoulder was forced awkwardly backward in the powerful attack, which ripped his shoulder tendons and muscles as he and the cougar landed on the ground. He said the cougar kept coming at him 6 or 7 times, and he fended it off with punches and kicks to the cougar's head and chest. On the final attack, the cougar got Kirshen's legs and was about an arm's length from his face when Rodriguez hit the mountain lion with a piece of wood from a nearby pallet. He is expected to fully recover but faces shoulder surgery and will be out of work for 3 months. Kirshen was the first of 2 victims in the mountain lion attack Wednesday west of Loveland. The second victim was Larimer County Sheriff Deputy Michael Ross, who, like Kirshen, received multiple injuries from the cougar. Both are receiving rabies treatments after the 91-pound mountain lion tested positive for the disease after wildlife officers fatally shot it. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. Special thanks to Tim Donzie, Daniel Applebaum, and John Geis for leads on stories this week. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have any questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here is Jason Obermiller and Eric Fitzgerald from Rackology. Jason and Eric, welcome back to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friends?
Doing good.
Doing well. As well as could be.
Excellent. All right, so let's get this. Let's get the elephant in the room off the table here. Let's talk virus. What is COVID-19 doing to you personally? Have you guys had any interactions with it? Have you caught it? Have you had any friends? How's it affecting your business?
Well, I mean, for the most part, we really don't have anybody around here that's infected, that we know of, obviously, but it's affecting, me teaching-wise. I'm teaching remotely rather than going into the school every day. I'm basically teaching out of my taxidermy shop here because my daughter's over in the house, taking her online classes.
Gotcha. Eric, how about you?
Yeah, kind of the same as far as we live in a sparsely populated area of Nebraska, so we're fortunate so far not to have a lot of travel in and out. So the cases around here, thank God, there's zero in the Loup Basin Health Department area that we're part of, and but just reading a lot from East Omaha, Douglas County, Sarpy County with their cases and what they're doing, shutting bars and restaurants down, and my heart goes out to all the owners and patrons to these places that rely on those guys for their income, because eventually it might hit here. And I spend the morning, thank God my wife's got a great job, and she works till 11 o'clock. She gets back at 11:30. I head into work because with our little one, we don't have anybody watch our baby, and trying to keep the kids doing their classes, online classes. I've got a 18-month-old, 5-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 13-year-old. And so trying to keep them busy and occupied during the morning. And my wife does a fantastic job in the afternoon. And I come into work and try to get some stuff done. So it's definitely thrown a monkey wrench in our way of life and how we're accustomed to living and working and being around people. And my father-in-law owns a grocery store, and they're doing a heck of a job trying to keep things in for people. And I'm just thankful that we live in a small enough community that everybody is very mindful of everybody when it comes to groceries or what they might need or helping out. A lot of negativity that you see, but there's a lot of positivity coming out of this. I think we're getting closer, but we're just on the tip of the iceberg here. We'll see what happens here in the next 3 or 4 weeks. But
right.
Yep.
Dusty, how about you? How has your life been affected so far?
Right now, it's pretty normal. I mean, we kind of did a little bit of preparation for it. Obviously, I got to feed animals and livestock, so my feed cost and things like that I stocked up on in preparation for what's to come here. It hit me pretty hard in the wallet, but still working right now. They've offered some vacation time through the government to let us take off if we was to get sick or a family member get sick. But, sports, kids, all schools have been shut down, bars, restaurants. I mean, you can do carry out at some places now, but you can't go and sit down and eat dinner or whatever, lunch or nothing like that. Kids are out of school. That seems like it's indefinitely here right now. They're talking that they may not go back till next school season, next year. The sports, all the extra outside of school sports have all been canceled. All the events have been canceled locally. It's just hunker down a little bit, kind of keep your distance. That it's making you. I'm a pretty active, talk to everybody type guy, and it's one of them things now where I'm like, keep 6 foot. Keep your 6 foot. Back up. You don't want to do this. Back up. No, I'm just kidding. But
I work in this feed store, and that's when you bring that up, that 6 foot. It's like what that person had on Facebook, that cattle prod. I got one sitting right outside my door, and I figure that way that's the 6 foot rule.
Yeah, it makes you think. It's just like, man, where before I shake somebody's hand and wouldn't think twice about it, that's just the way of life around here. It's a little small farming community where I live, and and then they're talking that they want to, they're wanting to shut everything down. I was like, yeah, that's great that you want to shut everything down, but the cows can't climb up in the hopper wagon and get them out front end loader bucket of corn. They got to be fed. So, and they're at my parents' farm, so I got to travel back and forth. And my dad's 69; he don't need to be out there trying to, wrestle cattle to get to the feeder and round bales. And so it just, it's one of the things where our livelihood, it depends on me being able to get to where my livestock is right now. But so far, so good. It's not too crazy, and people are understanding, I guess, a little bit better now. In the beginning, people were kind of weird about it. When we know some people that's completely locked down here around me that they won't even leave the house. I'm like, that's great and all, but how many days of that can you take?
Yeah, I know.
The big question, though, this is totally a serious subject. How many rolls of toilet paper do you have?
I got about 740 corn copiers back. And I tell you what,
that's the elephant. That's actually the elephant in the room because the funny thing is if the news would have said chicken noodle soup we're having a shortage of chicken noodle soup, it wouldn't have been toilet paper. It'd have been chicken noodle soup that would have flew off the shelf.
Right.
Yeah. I got 4 women at my house, so I've got toilet paper. That's just a natural habit to pick up a lot of toilet paper. That's what we do. We go to Sam's Club, we buy bulk toilet paper rolls.
Dusty, as long as I've known you, you have been the king of cleanliness with washing your hands and hand sanitizer. You've brought gallons of hand sanitizer to any convention we've ever gone to, and you actually got me on that kick, and I haven't been sick since.
Yeah, it's just I don't mind a common cold. It gives you something for your body to fight, but I'll be dang if I'm gonna. I don't open doors. Like I put my shirt sleeve. If I got a shirt sleeve on, I pull it over my hand, open doors. It's just something that I've done for a long period of time, and almost people at my shop now are like, oh man, I see why you grabbed that door handle like that for so many years.
Right.
I'm like, I don't need to take somebody else's germs, and I'm not saying everybody's dirty. That's not where I'm going with this, but
it's that 5% you worry about.
Yeah, you got to maintain your cleanliness in your hands, and because you're feeding yourself, and I chew a pinch of tobacco every now and then, and it's something that my hands got to be clean. So hand sanitizer to put a pinch of tobacco in for the last 5 years has probably been the most important thing that I've ever done, because it's just something that goes in my mouth, and I don't know. I'm just weird about it. I just got to be, I'll get dirty with the best of, but when it comes to going public places or out somewhere or ATA or SHOT Show in Vegas, my hands are going to be clean. You shake my hand, I probably acted rude to people because I grabbed my hand sanitizer out of my pocket and give myself a little squirt.
Right.
And look at me like, they look at me weird in the beginning, and they're like, "Can I get a shot of that?" I'm like, yeah, no problem.
I think after this, everybody will probably be on the same page. I think.
Yeah,
what's funny is before this whole deal,
I hear people that they're starting to like shake feet, and I'm like, oh man, I've been in the cattle pen all day. This could be epic.
You don't want to do that.
Before this whole deal got rolling, my students used to make fun of me so much because I was always, Germex, and they're like, well, you play around in the dirt, and you might gut a deer and just rinse your hands and eat a sandwich or something. I'm like, human germs, people are what scares me, not nature-y type germs. And they used to make so much fun of me for Germexing and paper towel when I leave the bathroom to open a door, or sneezing in your shirt. I always get on that kick with kids. I'm like, quit listening to people that say use your stupid elbow. I said, watch a YouTube video on it, and you'll see the sneeze go right underneath. It's so gross in slow motion. Right. And now all the kids are like, geez, Mr. Obermiller, you were right. I'm like, well, that's what happens when you're a science guy.
Yeah. It's just one of the things where it's almost a mental game with yourself. It's at a point, you take and with this coronavirus, and that's the most common way it's spreading is through hands and, touching things and, 6 foot thing. And it's just, it's just one of the things where it's like, man, I'm prepped for this. This is all right. I already do all the stuff that they're recommending.
Right.
Just because I can't grab a same door handle that 474 people did that morning. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Just bothers.
All right. People think it's funny though, because the other day a teacher was at one of our last teacher meetings, and one of the teachers at the table was getting ready to sneeze, and I hopped up and stepped back a couple steps, and they just kind of looked at me funny, and I'm like, well, you never know.
Yeah, you want to get them to laugh. It's called the Nightcrawler virus, and then it just breaks the ice.
The Rona.
Gotcha. All right, let's move on a little bit. I mean, my life has changed a little bit. Kids are home, and they're about ready to go on some at-home schooling stuff. They were cycling kids in very small batches and out of the school today to try to get their supplies that they left in school. And I think there were a max of 5 kids in the school at a time. And they had walkie-talkies, and they were calling inside to see if it was okay to let the next student in. It was absolutely bizarre. It was something you'd see in movies. But every place looks like a ghost town. But so far, so good. We just don't have that many cases in New Hampshire, and I'm not sure why, but I'll take it. And has it changed your businesses at all, guys? Before we get off the topic, has it changed any of the Rackology business?
I guess, in my opinion, from talking from like dealer to dealer, a lot of our stuff is over the phone anyway and via email or text.
Cabela's.
Yeah, Cabela's, a lot of our online Bass Pro Shop. It's to me, it hasn't changed much now, but it may pick up. I think with more people, shopping online during these times. But as a business in whole, where Jason and I just converse and stuff like that, I don't think it's changed it too much as of now.
Okay. All right.
Actually, I'm really in hopes, where people are not going to the stores. We're on Cabela's.com. We're not on the store shelves yet. So that doesn't hurt my feelings quite as much, because I feel like this is, it gives them an opportunity to, people are going to be shopping online. Obviously right now business is starting to pick up. I think it's just because of the spring planting season anyways, but where we're on Cabela's.com, and, for the industry insiders, we're on Guide Fitter as well as our website. I think that just kind of helps to alleviate the stress of worrying about if people, are going into the stores, if that was their only sole means of, of sales.
Gotcha.
And my only concern is going down the road, if something were to happen in the communities where we're doing a lot of our bagging and sealing, and if they start having a shortage or have to shut the doors because of an influx of cases around here, which hopefully doesn't happen. We're kind of like you in New Hampshire here in Nebraska, especially getting further west. It's been pretty, I think we're ahead of the curve as far as taking precautions. So hopefully that helps. But a couple of our partners, if something were to happen, my only concern is, getting stuff bagged in time. But we've got a pretty good inventory right now to go forward, especially through the spring.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's kind of like toilet paper. It's going to be running out, so people should probably get their orders in now.
Yeah. It's caused a shortage of Rackology.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So
put that on the news.
Let's talk about the winter. Obviously, we're coming out of winter here. We're going to be turning the corner into spring in a couple days. What did you do? And this is probably more for Jason. What did you do over the winter to help the health of your deer herd? I know you've got a whole line of minerals and nutrients, and I want to get into that, but I also want to get into the seed line. We've had you guys on the show in the past, really before the seed line came out. And then we've done a whole lineup of videos at ATA, and we went through everything you had at that point. But you've developed further beyond that. So I want to get into some of the new blends. I want to get into some of the new fertilizers that you've got on the market. But first, let's start with the winter time. What should we be thinking about if we are going to be supplementing the deer herd with different nutrients? What have you done, Jason, over the winter to supply your deer herd and keep them healthy?
Well, the first thing is as soon as, if I'm still hunting here in Nebraska, you can't legally put anything out within 200 yards of where you're hunting. But as soon as I was done, I hit it pretty heavy with I'd pour out the straight vitamin and mineral concentrate as well as the total package. And that's basically what that is it's our vitamin and minerals along with the protein and the attractant, the original all-in-one bag deal. And, I try and get them as soon as I can after the rut, really, to get them healed up from the rut. Because not only are the bucks, run down, the does are getting run, they're run down as well from getting ran around. So I like to get it out there as soon as possible. Some of the key antler growing months are obviously February through April. That's when the deer decide, they put onto their skeleton what they're going to pull off in the fall to put on their antlers. And so, the more vitamins and minerals you can give them in the winter months into the spring, the greater you're going to maximize that genetic potential in the fall for building antlers. And the thing I see in my taxidermy shop all too often from guys that they just put out protein, basically, maybe some cattle mineral, but maybe usually just protein, is the deer's rack when it's growing is majority of its protein while it's growing. And so essentially what they're doing is they're growing their rack by giving them all this protein. But then when the antler decides it's time to kick over to the other side and start to harden it, the mineralizing portion, the minerals not there as much if they're not supplementing. And so what happens is it's worse on their deer, really, because they increase their rack size with the protein, but then the mineral's not there to harden it, and you end up with all these broken tines and so forth, come rut season. So I keep it out as much as I can.
Yeah, what's the ratio on that? How many? Like, give example on how much mineral mix you're putting out throughout the winter.
Gosh, it depends on the area and their intake, but I may go through. When they're really hitting it hard, I may go through 300 pounds in a week. Some guys have went through more. We've got a customer that I think within a month went through a ton, but he's in an area where there's really not much for agricultural crops and grass around. It's in the river bottom. And it's an area where a lot of the deer yard up. So everybody else's deer a lot of times is coming there too. But it kind of depends. You can ration it down more if need be. The deer, if they're getting their daily nutrition value, you can limit, how much they get per week if you really needed to. Because there's customers we work with that they may, they may come to us with a budget and say, I've got $200 or I've got $500 to spend. What should I get and when's the best time to put it out? And, you can usually figure out something for about anybody's budget. Ultimately, it's going to determine then what we put out and what time of the year we put it out, versus over a longer stretch. And one thing I was going to say too about you asked about what's changed. One thing that we've been researching for the last probably year and a half or so or more is a way to reduce the number of ticks on our animals. Our previous blend had internal parasite components that also helped the absorption rate of nutrients. But we went and took it a few steps further, and not only now with the internal parasite, this kind of just concluded our first year of really studying the outcome on the ticks. And, I'm not going to guarantee it's going to keep 100% of the ticks off everybody's deer, but of all that I surveyed this year, and a lot of them, people that are using our products, where I'm also a taxidermist here, I get to see the end result of our products as well. So it's really, awesome in that way. And I know this sounds like a huge statement. I do think that the number of ticks around our area was down to begin with. So I'm not saying it's all our product, because this is just the first year of it. But there was literally no ticks on all the deer that I surveyed this year. So that was actually really surprising to me. I figured we'd find, a few, but that's really one of the newest and greatest things that we have been working on and putting into as far as on our feed line is the whole anti-parasite and tick and what, components that we added to it.
Well, and I'll add in on Jason, as a byproduct of that's helping with ticks. It's also, even though horn flies and phase flies, and Dusty, you could attest to this, is what their effect on cattle, on stress, what they cause them cattle if they get in close proximity to them cattle and they're biting continuously on the face or on the backs. Unwanted stress is unwanted weight shed and ready to gain on the animals, and that could be truly said. It would thin those off, but what we have on there on the ingredients help suppress, face flies and flies that might irritate all sorts of ungulates. I think it was kind of a byproduct of what we were seeing. And with a heavy fly year, you could definitely tell. And to kind of add in on like what you were talking, Dusty, with ratios, and it, like what Jason said, it goes with area, and I think it goes with weather patterns. Last year we had snow on the ground pretty much from late October all the way through March. So it covered up a lot of the foraging, whether they're out on a cornfield or bean field or in the woods foraging. They were going through feed quite a bit last year until the snow melted pretty much all at once when we started having flooding issues. And so we had, for every 10 bags of, meal, the total package we were putting out, we were putting one bag of the vitamin mineral concentrate in specific areas where deer travel, and they seem to survive. So this year there wasn't as much snow on the ground through the whole winter, so they were foraging more, not going through as much, unless, like Jason said, there was a high density of deer, and then they were kind of you could definitely tell when they started needing it in February and March. When things got cold, they started hitting it harder. So you kind of have to watch weather patterns and temperature. And if it's cold, and if you go outside and it's cold and you're stressing out a little bit, the deer are naturally stressing. And when they can find easier picking feed that's good for them, they're going to go to that more often than when there's no snow on the ground and they can kind of forage all day.
Interesting. I was trying to do a little research here on if white-tailed deer can get pink eye, because that's something that, with the flies, you're talking about the flies there, that's the number one carrier of the pink eye.
Yep. Yeah, and I think they naturally can fend a lot of that off because they aren't domesticated, but just the biting and overall, going into April and May and then coming back into August, September when the flies are bad. I know it affects deer herds, especially when they're, if they're grouped up a little bit, it's going to affect them. If they're spread out, it's not going to be as bad. But if you're in close proximity of cattle and in ranch ground, it's just one byproduct that's just kind of set it kind of another tick box that we're like, well, that's actually working pretty well and something that we could see. And so I thought that was very interesting with what the product in there, because now some of that product is coming out in cattle feed and horse feed, doing the same thing that we have been seeing. So
one
kind of
thing
we're
I'm
ahead of the curve on it,
for,
and it kind of needs kind of coming in other things now.
One thing I'm kind of hoping for too, and it'd be really difficult this would be a really difficult one to really test without having a closed group, but where it really deters the parasites, including like with flies and biting flies. I'm pretty excited about the possibility of deterring midges, especially early in the season when the bucks have got velvet on their rack, so it's literally it's like a Chinese buffet on their head for midges. And if we can kind of deter the midges, it'd be great if this my theory kind of holds through, that we also cut down on the number of EHD cases. But again, it would be very difficult to to really prove it without a kind of a captive herd and actually testing it like that. And
like we say, all biting insects are going for one thing, is blood, and that's where this product is actually absorbed in through the stomach walls into the bloodstream. And so somebody might ask, well, why what they eat can fend off stuff like this? It gets in the bloodstream, and blood goes to all parts, especially ears, noses, extremities. And so that when something bites an animal, they don't like the taste of that blood, they'll go find something else. And so that's where the science kind of bluntly, that's what it's happening. And so it gets into the bloodstream of the animal. It's definitely not, it's all natural. It won't hurt any of the animals, but it gets into their bloodstream, moves through the body, and the insects don't like the taste, or there won't be as many. They'll move on to something down the road. So hopefully that protects the herd a little bit.
That's super interesting.
Now, is this in every product that you have, or is it just in certain products?
It's in all of our feed products. Yep.
Okay. So not the seeds, but or maybe the seeds too, but mostly the mineral stuff?
No, it has to go. And that's one thing I wish there's no way to get it into their system through like plants. Or even, there's no spray on form of this. If there were be
yet
but in the feed realm, what they ingest in their stomach on our feed products, it's in there.
Okay. Something I would be very interested in, and I know you're still in kind of the development phase of this and without a whole ton of scientific data to support it just yet, but it sounds like everything's promising. Coming from a very dense and rich area of Lyme disease and deer ticks, where I live, I think half the people on my road have gotten Lyme disease. I can count 3 people within 200 yards of me that have gotten disease, just living in the area. So that's something I would be very interested in seeing more of in the Northeast for sure. That's that could be a winner.
And this ingredient, humans could have it too. They could eat this as well. And but looking back, a lot of this research takes a lot of time and it takes dollars. And so one thing about it is some of the other livestock industries that do have that capability have taken it in the last 6 months that I've seen and made a lot of headway and a lot of scientific proof that it is working. And so it's very interesting that, and cattle are fairly closely related to, deer, to elk, and, though being domesticated, a lot of their trials and stuff. And these guys put a lot of time and a lot of money into these things because it costs a lot of money for cattle producers, for equine people. Flies and biting insects cause a lot of money out of their pocket that they're willing to put into this research and to have in the product. So
right.
It definitely is kind of put the exclamation point at the end of our stuff that we were thinking on the right lines and by getting it in there early.
Gotcha. Now, with the products that you're selling through Cabela's and places like that, maybe you can just kind of bring us up to speed, Jason, on what products you have available, what size bags you're selling, where the smaller bags and the bigger bags are available, any new products since the last time we did a rundown on it. Be curious, and then what's the distribution on that? Can you get it anywhere in the country, or is it limited to certain areas?
Yeah, so on Cabela's.com, they've got all of our products that are in the small bags, which like for food plots, everything is quarter acre bag. That way everything matches up. So all of our plots are quarter acre bag. The food plot fertilizer the one that you can supplement your deer through your food plot with, that's a quarter acre bag. So that all matches up. We've got, for the feed, we've got a 7-pound total package in the red bag, but we've also got the 40-pound bags. And we're working on getting the 20-pounders. It's just kind of, a little bit of research and stuff, trying to find out what people prefer, the 40-pounders over the 20 as far as like what we go to next. And then the 40-pound and the 10-pound vitamin and mineral concentrate. So those 6 products are on Cabela's.com. People that want larger quantities usually, directly contact us for, like half-ton and ton orders. Although on Cabela's, I believe they've got it. I believe you can get, if you order it through them, the half-ton and 1 ton.
You can.
Most of the time, people contact us directly for the larger orders because they're serious about it and they're wanting to know other details just besides wanting to just buy it, right? So, and then like on Guide Fitter, we've got the full gamut on there. Everything that I said on Cabela's, and they for sure have the the half ton and the full ton on all the feed products. Same thing on our website. So that's all. Everything's pretty much available. And as far as like shipping, I mean, it just depends on the day. We ship all over the U.S. So there's no place that it can't go. That's the great thing about Cabela's.com is where shipping is free after, you spend $50 on Cabela's.com and shipping is free. People either buy 2 or 3 bags of our stuff, or if they only needed 1 bag, they'll buy something else to meet that $50 and they got free shipping. So,
well, then when it comes to the full ton orders, you're talking anywhere from $100 to $300 to ship coast to coast, depending on where you're at and what carrier. I wish that one of our carriers went all over in the United States, but they don't. Unfortunately, they're very competitively priced and very good at what they do. But if a person were to buy a full ton on Cabela's and you're looking at $300 saving shipping, it works really well. But like Jason said, when people are serious, they have other questions, and we figure out shipping quotes with everybody. And I guess long story short is we'll ship from coast to coast if need be.
Gotcha. So it's with that $50 thing at Cabela's, you're saving a ton in shipping. If you try to, wow, that's interesting. Yep. Gotcha. So, is there anything that you should do? I mean, coming out of the winter, you kind of explain what you do, but going into the spring, is there anything that we should be thinking about as far as the mineral supplements?
Probably just the big thing is the sooner you get out, the better. I know, some people are sitting there thinking, well, I've only got so much money that I can spend. And that's where you can always shoot us an email. And we can always visit with you as far as like what you're able to do. But, like I said, the big thing is just the sooner you can get it out to them, the better for recovery throughout the winter. And not only just antler growth, but honestly, more important, the fawn gestation all winter long. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty much proved this, that the state that the fawns are gestated in over the winter months dictate the capabilities and the maturity level that you can get out of fawns as they grow up. Areas that we're not feeding this in the winter months, the fawns come fall are a noticeably different size difference from the areas where they were conceived and fed on this stuff. So that's I guess to me that'd be my biggest piece of advice is get it started early, and depending on your budget, if you need be, contact us and kind of get an idea of when would be the best time to put it out to fit your budget.
Mm-hmm. One thing that tactic we like, and that's not really a tactic, it's just basically more information that we try to give people. And when it's going through your head, like, man, I should be out getting some sheds, early. It's a good time to take that mineral out, not say the attractant, the protein and the mineral itself through the whole winter, like Jason said, to get them fawns off to a good start with those does. But when you're out thinking about shed hunting, we always tell people, if depending on what they got room for, if they got a backpack, throw a couple 10-pounders in there, and it's a good time to start getting some buck travel patterns. You watch where they're, where they came out of the winter, and maybe where the old scrapes were during hunting season, during the rut, and start getting some stuff ready for trying to pattern the deer with that mineral. Those bucks along with the does. It's just a good time to get out there and know if I'm shed hunting, I should be putting some mineral down too.
Gotcha. Do you notice throughout the year in the areas that you are observing that deer hit this stuff more readily at certain times of the year and less at others?
Oh, definitely. I can tell you right on my trail camera, I can tell you right when the bucks need it, because I can have it out full force right after the rut, and they'll kind of pick around at the and I'm talking about the vitamin and mineral concentrate here, the heavy hitter. They'll hit the total package all the time, but they'll be, just kind of nibbling at the vitamin and mineral concentrate. And I think it was last year, February 9th is when all of a sudden it just seemed like you turned the switch on and they were on top of it. And it was solid for like 2 weeks, just pounding the pile. I had to put a couple bags out. And then after that, it slowed down, just kind of nibbling back and forth like it was before. And then about the first part of April, they hit it really hard again. Whereas the year before, it was more mid-February and late March. So it just depends on the time of year. But, if you got a trail camera on it, you can definitely tell. Like all of a sudden their body said, okay, now is when we need this stuff, the certain nutrient.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's kind of transition into the seed stuff. We haven't really talked about the seed stuff on this show. I'm very excited to learn about the different products that you have that are new, and I'm also very excited just to talk about seeds in general on the show with you guys because we haven't really done this. I know we've tried a couple times, and as life goes, things just get rescheduled. And but boy, this is something I've been wanting to do for quite a while.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's the same excitement that Jason and I have going into this, being around agriculture my whole life and seeds in general. It's kind of my livelihood right now. And the reason I chose that is I love doing it, just like Jason with the biology side. And I guess we were talking about winter into spring and some things we could do on the feed. There's a few things that we could be doing on the seed side. And as we all know, the more work you put in, the more successful you're going to be at no matter what, unless you're just lucky and hit everything right. But luckily it only happens 1 in every 10 years, in my opinion. But when it comes to Mother Nature and what everything throws at you. So one thing that we like to do, November, December, even into January, depending on where you're at and how much snowfall you have and what the topography of your plots are, which, your slope, it's a good time to be doing some winter interseeding of our Plot 365. Whether you're interseeding into a Plot 365 that you seeded last year, which our Plot 365 is our main perennial that we've got that has a lot of clover, chicory, and just a really good perennial plot. And the thing about our products is we don't chinch. We use the best varieties of each product, whether it be clover or chicory, to in turn give you better success. I mean, the palatability is important to us. The relative feed value is important to us. We're not just going to give you something that's going to look good to your eye, but it might not be nutritious to the deer or whatever you're targeting there. So our Plot 365 is something that a person could start on and some areas that you could winter interseed. And winter interseed, even if the ground's frozen, it's a fairly simple thing to do. It's what everybody kind of coins the name throw and grow. When you're interseeding, especially with like our Plot 365, what needs to be inoculated is inoculated, and what needs to be treated is treated. So when you go in there and you spread that, even in 2 inches of snow, on one decent day, it's going to go down into that soil. It's going to be on that soil. Some of the moisture, when it melts, is going to melt it into that soil. And then you're going to have something that's going to be seeded with relatively no machinery cost. And it's something that'll start a little earlier for you. And like I said, the considerations are, if you got a lot of slope to your plot where you're going to get some, soil erosion from water running off, the snow melting, it's going to carry your seed too, and fertilizer for that matter if you put some on. If you got a relatively flat, small plot, which most plots are, they're in kind of little nooks and crannies and good little honey holes. It's going to get in that soil and it's going to get that plot off to a good start. At the same time, that's where we like to go in with our fertilizer. Right after you seed your Plot 365, go back on with your fertilizer, let it soak into the ground, because everybody thinks they're going to be wasting fertilizer. But if there's nothing green growing, it's not going to utilize that fertilizer until it starts. So it's going to get in the soil, it's going to start breaking down, and it's going to give that plot off to a really fast spring start. So our Plot 365 is our go-to when it comes to winter interseeding and early spring interseeding with our fertilizer.
You call it winter interseeding. Is that also known as like frost seeding? I know that's like
yes, exactly.
A fun term to say.
Frost seeding. Yeah. Basically, the frost. When the soil's frosted, and you can't tamp any more T-posts in the ground when it's that hard. Yeah, that frost seeding or interseeding, winter interseeding, is exactly the same. So.
Gotcha. Now, this talking about the plot 365 frost seeding, winter interseeding, and using it in combination with the fertilizer. Is the fertilizer also called fertilizer 365?
No, it's just our food plot fertilizer,
Okay.
because it travels across all of our fertilizers right now with our current lineup and with other companies' lineups too, but it fits ours really well on what species are in there and what they're going to need. And during ATA, we did the videos kind of explaining, I won't go into too much detail about the fertilizer, but it definitely, like Jason said, you supplement your deer through that food plot, through the fertilizer that's taken through the plants, and hopefully get that ratio where we need, depending on the year. So the plot 365, the reason we named it that is it's a year-round food plot, and it's a year after year food plot, perennial. So it's something you could get established and have for 3 or 4 years. And that's why we like frost seeding or winter interseeding, is because you can keep, say you have a dry year, 1 year, you don't get the best stand, you can keep interseeding that and kind of get that more of a carpet blend every year and increase its basically overall tonnage for those deer.
Okay. So the fertilizer itself is helping the plants grow, in addition to whatever the plants bring in through that fertilizer. It's also helping the animals. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, correct. Yep.
Can you?
What we tried to do is emulate what we could do through feed, through a fertilizer, through the plant, and it's tough, but in the right given year, the ratios that we have with decent rainfall should push in and do that.
Gotcha. Can you go into what tonnage is? I know, what that term gets thrown around a lot, and Dusty, you've used that word a lot. And just so we're absolutely clear, what is tonnage exactly?
Well, tonnage is yield, or what you pull off of that certain area. So it's either what we as humans pull off if we're raising alfalfa or raising a forage, or corn. Our tonnage is measured in yield. It's what we pull off of the ground. And it's important because we know if we're pulling a lot off and the deer are eating a lot and it looks great and lush, and we had very good success while we were hunting. Going into the fall, it's like having a sports car and revving the engine, and you're going to pull more out of the gas tank, and you got to put more in the gas tank when you go back that fall or that spring. So tonnage or yield is important to know, so you know how to fertilize how to do everything appropriately. So alfalfa and haylage is all measured in tons, and so a lot of our food plot we use the word tonnage and relative feed value, because those two go hand in hand on what you're actually doing with that piece of ground.
Okay. And is there a way to evaluate the quality of the seed? I know you guys are picking great seeds, and you're evaluating the nutritional value of everything you have. And is there a way to tell that your stuff is better than some other product that you might see on a shelf? How do you decide as a consumer that you're doing the right thing for the herd as Rackology, and that everything I'm getting is high quality, is going to grow right, is going to be the best nutritional value compared to others on the market? How do we know that?
Well, I guess the main thing is, going back to it, is Jason and I, we put our heart and soul into this stuff, and as much knowledge, and we love researching things and trying new things. So what sets us apart? Well, first, to answer your question, yes, there is a test. You could actually test the products if you go out there and you've got at least 6 inches of growth, which means you are off to a good start. You had ample rain, it germinated, and everything came up great, because you need water to germinate it. You can't expect to go in a popcorn dry field and expect a miracle. You need to have some water, and so you get up to about 6 inches. You could actually cut that off at the base of the plants, and you take all of it. You take what I like doing to do a feed test or relative feed value test is take a 1 foot by 1 foot, just take a measuring tape and do 1 foot by 1 foot and cut it down to the soil surface, put it in a bag, preferably a paper bag, so it doesn't condensate and start dying early. And within 24 hours, trying to get that sent off to a lab so they could test it within about 3 days. What they'll do is dry it down, and they'll do a feed value, whether it's near infrared type feed analysis test or just a wet chemistry test. And what they'll do is they'll basically give you a relative feed value. And that relative feed value, it's a full page of what all the goodies that are in that for whatever's eating it. So I would put ours up against anything on the market. If you get good 6 inches of growth of the product you're supposed to have there, the relative feed value will show you that we're using quality products and we don't skimp on it. We put all our money back into research and development, and it could be seen when we send our test in. I would love to have all my cover crop guys use our stuff because I've seen what it could do. But when you start talking on a 160 acre field, it gets a little more pricey than a quarter acre or 2 acre food plot.
Gotcha.
But you could definitely do the testing on that.
One thing just to kind of interject there that, not that Eric's selling himself short, but, when we do the research, the thing that also separates us from other companies is, and everybody's got their deal, and, I'm not knocking any other companies. The fact of the matter I will state is, when you deal with us and our products, we are the scientists behind it. Eric's an agronomist, so we don't have to go hire somebody to put together our food plots for us. And a lot of times when you talk to individuals that have had food plots developed, most of the time, a place will throw together a nice plot for them, but it's not like how we, our knowledge behind it is what you're, essentially what you're buying as far as the quality. We don't just put your average plants. You can put a number of different types of clovers in it, but when you get right down to the specific genus species of each clover, certain ones are more palatable, which means they're greater digestibility for deer. They taste better. They attract deer more. And so that's kind of, even though a person can say, well, here's what's in some of these plots, that's kind of the secret behind it all is, exactly what species are you using. And not only that, the ratios, Eric puts the correct ratios into the bag so that when your plots start coming up, everything that's supposed to be in that bag comes up, versus I've had other products on the market that I've put out in the past that, some of the plants that are stated on the bag don't come up because, whoever designed them didn't think about the ratios as far as competition amongst plants. And, again, it's our products are blended so that, they're going to work with each other, and, you're going to actually be getting what you paid for. And same way with the feed. We didn't hire a nutritionist to put together our stuff based off of somebody that knows about cattle. I actually did my master's study on antler growth in deer and deer nutrition. So it's kind of where a lot of other places fall short, is the actual deer research, and not so much just go hire somebody to throw something together for you and throw it on the shelf.
Gotcha. All right. Very good. So I'm pleased to hear that there's actually a scientific test that you can do. You can go out and do a square footage, then test the actual nutritional value. I think that's really cool. And thinking about the things you're putting into the soil, and we can kind of transition out of wintertime and frost seeding into maybe a springtime. Is this the time of year, especially as we get into April, that you should start really thinking about the traditional food plots? And if so,
Yep.
What should I be looking for? And does the soil matter? Does the certain chemicals in the soil matter? Does the water content matter? Is there a certain time we should do it when it's completely saturated with snow melt and water and mud season, or should we wait a little bit after that? These are all things that are very foreign to me because we don't see this a lot in New Hampshire, in the temperate state we are, but certainly you get outside of here and everybody wants to know about it. Yep.
Well, one thing, on like doing the test, one thing I did, that you will probably want to do 3 different spots of the field to get a good average. I want to interject that just so you get a good average. You don't go to one spot of the field. That way you get 3 different spots, mix them all in one bag. You can do them all 3 separately and get 3 separate tests. Just be known that each test costs you $15-20, so which is a cheap price to pay to know you've got some good stuff out there. But going into the question you asked, one thing I like about frost seeding is it gets the plot ahead of the weed pressure. As we know, what we got to worry about when it comes to putting in our traditional plots in the spring is soil conditions, weed conditions, and how much, what the weather forecast looks like. So everybody likes to look at a calendar and say, okay, here's the date we start, but you really got to go off of your instincts a little bit and knowing, well, man, it's April, but man, it's still cold out and it hasn't really warmed up much. It's going to be a little later season planting, maybe a week or 2 than you normally do. But on a typical year, depending on where you're at, longitude, latitude, just for instance, in Nebraska here, we usually start kicking off a lot of our spring plots April, mid-April, especially if it's got alfalfa in it or clover. It seems like the alfalfa likes to take off when it's a little cooler and you get some good growth before it gets ungodly hot. That could be, midsummer, that could be a detriment to it. So more the planting happens in April to mid-May for most of it, like our brassica plot. You get really good quantity when you plant our brassica plot in the spring versus the fall. You're not going to get as much, or like we talked about, tonnage, but you're going to get better quality later in the year. So if you want to do a fall plot, is what we always called a kill plot, all the brassicas are about ripe right when you want them to come in. And a lot of times we've had guys plant a brassica plot in the spring and go back and, again, interseed a brassica. So you got another generation of brassica coming up for that kill time. And it also knows the deer know where that plot's at for the spring, going through the spring and early summer. So, yeah, right. And plot 365 definitely could be planted in the spring. You don't have to frost seed that. So it's just something we got to watch the soil temperature, and even a simple, doesn't have to be digital, just a soil thermometer costs $2 or $3 at a Walmart gardening center. If you really want to know, you usually have to have that temperature around 50 degrees and about in the top inch. That's usually the best time for seeds to germinate. So the temperature needs to be about 50, 55 degrees, and with a good, 2-week forecast to get it off to a good start. And also you got to look at, you talked about moisture. Is it better to do when it's wet? My rule of thumb is to go out there with a shovel or a small gardening spade and dig down, 1 foot. And in that 1 foot, if you could grab that soil and ball it up in your hand, and it's not like mud, it doesn't squish through your fingers, but it holds together as a small ball, and then it breaks apart easily. That's about the best time to be planting, because if you go in when it's too soupy and wet, you're going to cause crusting issues, and you're going to just cause all kind of issues for the seedling to start. If you wait for it to be too dry, or if it is too dry, that's you're going to have some issues with it even germinating. So you want to hit that perfect medium. And the good thing about plots is they're normally, unless you have an excessive amount of rain in the spring, they're usually you've got about a month time frame that you could get in there and easily get it at that soil's texture.
Gotcha.
So not too dry, not too wet, and needs to be warm enough. And these are all things. Granted, I have planted plots that I kind of scratch my head going, this is the only day I have to do this. It's a little wet, but I got to go. And I've had good results. It's just probably not the best.
Okay. So it sounds like, based off of the basic testing that you were doing, balling up the dirt, getting a basic temperature thermometer, you can tell moisture, you can tell temperature. That's kind of indicating the time to plant, and that will change depending on where you are in the country, right? So
Yes.
That's not going to be the same in the south as it is in the north, but the same principles apply, it sounds like.
Yes.
And
on the back of our bags, we have kind of a guideline of where you're at as far as on the normal growing season, depending on where you're at in the United States, when you should be looking at planting most of our plots.
Okay. Gotcha. And then as far as it's probably semi-predictable, I would assume as well.
Yes.
For the most part. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
And one thing I did forget to some plots, like our brassica, will grow. You want a little bit of good sunlight, and you want some good shade during the different times of the day. So when you're planting, or when you're going out and planting where you might want a new plot, or where a plot's always done well for you, you've probably got that already. But you kind of want to look at what times of day the sun's going to be beating down. Like here in Nebraska, in the Midwest, July is terrible on us. Hot, dry, like a furnace fan a lot. So you want to make sure that the species, whatever you're growing there in that food plot, has got a little reprieve in the mornings and in the evenings. So I always tell guys, it's always nice if you've got kind of a row of trees or some type of a shade to the west and the east of you for those evening and morning cool downs.
Gotcha. Okay. Now you talked about having I guess it's like an early season, and it sounds like it's almost like beginning to condition your deer herd to come to that spot as a
correct
ample place to have good nutritious feed and fill their bellies.
Yeah, you want them to know where the grocery store is to keep them, and mainly to keep them on. If you're hunting a small property, you want to make sure they know where they can come and be safe, and hopefully in the fall you get a chance to go after them. But yeah, you want to keep their bedroom, and you want to keep their kitchen on your property if at all possible. And so in the springtime, that kind of sets them off on, oh, yep, here it is, and clicks in their brain that they're going to keep coming back to that.
Okay, so keep taking a look, see if there's still stuff there, and then then they call it the kill plot in the fall, and that's kind of like an August kind of planning, or a little bit earlier.
Yep.
Okay.
No, that's exactly right. Again, depending on the year. But I usually shoot for about August 15th. I've planted all the way up to September 10th and have good luck. It all depends on when the frost comes in to your area. If you tend to get frost earlier, if you're at higher elevations, you might want to plant a little early, beginning of August. If you don't have to worry about frost, you can get away with it till mid-September and still have pretty good luck with a kill plot with brassicas or clovers, whatever it may be. And again, fall is another really good time to plant plot 365. And that's another name, a reason for its name is through the whole summer, you could, from actually November through May, and then from, early August on is another good time to get your plot 365 established, because sometimes in the fall, depending on the year, again, I keep sound like a broken record, but depending on the year, it sometimes is better to plant the plot 365 in the fall, depending on where you're at. And it just seems like it doesn't have near the weed competitiveness, whether weeds might be present in that plot. Around here, it's a lot of palmer amaranth and pigweed, and that they don't have to contend with in the fall. And so late season, you can go all the way up until probably September 10th or so on some of our plots.
I think something that's often overlooked is, as far as, you throw some clover out of what, in one of your guys' food plot bags. It just needs soil to seed contact and some moisture, and it'll grow.
Yes. Yep.
I think it's something that, a lot of people think that they need, large equipment, or go out there with a tiller and work for a week trying to get a 100-yard, 6-foot wide strip tilled up. Yeah, tillage is important on a few applications, but as far as throw and grow, as long as the seed can make soil contact and gets a little moisture, it's going to sprout, germinate, and come up. And I think that, do you guys see that? That's a lot of it's almost like a misconsumption on a food plot. Is that something that you guys see talking to customers?
Yeah, we see it. Guys want to get, they kind of overthink it a lot. I'm glad they do, because it shows how interested they are in making sure they're going to, get a good stand. But yeah, a lot of times I tell them, and really in the fall and in the spring, even if you've got a weed eater and a rake, that might be all you need. If you get out there and you got some stuff growing, you take that weed eater and you go down to the dirt with it, and you might have to go through a spool of line or get some of those heavier blades on those things. But just a weed eater, rake that grass off of where you just weed eated, and we're raking the pile, interseed. All you got to do is, go with a regular spinner applicator and go. But I do have guys that I'm going to get a 4-wheeler with a fertilizer applicator and a seed applicator, and I'm going to do this. I need to get a tractor down here. I need to get a tiller down there. I don't know if I'll be able to make it through there with the trees. On some of the big plots, you definitely probably want to mix the soil up a little bit. But our seed is meant to, as long as you got that seed sitting on top of the ground and have some soil contact and you get some water to germinate it, it's going to germinate and put that taproot start going down into the soil. That's all you need to get it started. So you don't need a lot. You don't need a lot to get these things going. And I just tell people every year is an experience. You just keep building on there and doing some different stuff. But So yeah, we do get that from guys saying, they put their hands up, so I just don't have enough to do something like that. And they actually do kind of step it through it with them.
Yeah, I've been seeing a few guys randomly posting that they're renting irrigation pluggers. Behind pluggers, and they're actually creating their food plots with that because it's it's pulling that plug of soil out of the ground, and then they go in there and broadcast seed what they're wanting to plant. You get the plug holes and you got soil on the ground, and they're saying they're running over it with a quad and a piece of chain link fence, and it's busting up just enough soil to get that seed, just to get that little 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch of coverage of dirt on top of it, and it's actually doing real well.
Yeah, and they're very
in areas where there's enough green material around. One thing that works awesome, and this again I have to stress that it has to be fairly green, is if you kill that plot, like say with Roundup, once it's all dead and brown and everything else around it's green, if you were to torch that makes the best seed bed, and there's no raking, and you leave the carbon there for the soil. But I just, one thing I notice is a lot of people are afraid of fire. Mm-hmm. It's definitely a great tool.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Prescribed burns and everything we see, the green material coming out of that carbon is second to none. Yep.
So thinking about carbon and thinking about the soil again, and talking about fertilizers, and we talked about the moisture content, we talked about the temperature. Is there something else we should do to test the contents of the soil as far as the minerals that are there, and what should we add to it in particular? Or does your fertilizer add to the whole thing? Is there anything we should do in addition to just moisture and temperature?
Yeah, something that's a real easy thing to do is, and you don't need a soil probe to do it. You can go out there with, like I said, a garden shovel. You want to go down, anywhere from 8 to 11 inches, 8 to 12 inches, and get a good core from top to bottom of your soil. And anybody that ever needs a soil testing kit, I know there's other companies that have them. They charge for them, or some of them say, hey, just let us know. We'll send it to you. If somebody needs, and they're using our product or interested in using our product, if anybody out there says, hey, I kind of want to test my soil, what we do is we'll send out a free test kit, depending on how many bags they need. If they need 5 bags, we'll send them 5 bags. If they need 1 bag for 1 sample, we'll send them 1. They ship them back to us. The shipping will be on them. They'll have to pay for the shipping to get it here to me, and I'll take them to our lab. And and all my guys, I do $10 a sample. I could give them recommendations. If they know of a good lab around them, they could do all this themselves. They could put it in they don't have to have a soil sample bag. They could put it in a paper lunch bag. And I've had guys put them in Ziploc bags, take them into a local lab and have them tested. What we normally do is what most labs have is what they call a routine test for soils. And then they have one that's maybe a little more advanced, and the prices fluctuate from 10 to probably $15 a sample. And they could have a list of what's in the soil. And they could also have a recommendation either from that lab or from myself of what they need. Our fertilizer is meant, we talked about tonnage and growth, and it's formulated to give our plot what it needs for that growth. If for some reason you start getting a lot of weed pressure and you start getting some other stuff in there, it's using more fertilizer than what the plot is using. So sometimes a soil test will tell you, okay, we might need a little bit more of this, especially if it's a brand new broke out piece of ground you're going to a plot. Our plots are meant for year after year going in the same spot, and year after year it's going to start producing its own fertilizer, so that our fertilizer is more than enough to use a quarter acre. So to get it to that, I'm talking, maybe 4 years. To get it to that, you possibly might need some more nitrogen or more potassium or phosphorus to get to that level. Those would be the only things you would need. You wouldn't need any more nitrogen, in my opinion, mainly phosphorus and potassium. Our formulated zinc, boron, and our NutriPack is well and more efficient than I've seen, even with some lower testing on those particular nutrients. So I guess long story short, if it's been 4 or 5 years of food plot, our fertilizer is going to be more than adequate. If it's a new one, I definitely recommend getting some soil testing done.
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a minimum size food plot that you should put in? Like if I'm looking at a spot, what am I looking for a indicator that it might be a good place to put it? And is there some kind of a size calculation of what is there something too small?
Okay. I guess when I look at it, if I know the ground and I look at something, when you talk about a food plot being too small, you got to worry about it getting. You got to know what your deer herd or whatever is going to be eating it, what their capabilities. You put a small plot in and you've got a high density of deer. What they're going to do is they're going to go to that first because it's going to be more palatable than the grass and some of the other stuff that's growing. They're going to keep mowing it down to nothing, and it's going to really severely stunt the plants that are in there. So you want your plot big enough that it's going to take care of, I'm not saying all your herd, but you want something that's going to spread them out a little bit.
Okay. So
I guess we've put plots in that are, 50 foot by maybe 60 foot, and they're strategically placed. Not a lot. I mean, deer do go there, but it seems to work really well. So I would say that'd be the smallest one I do. Is I'd roughly go 50 by 50. 50 foot by 50 foot is probably as small as I'd go. Okay. And you can go there's guys that have 160 acre pivots of alfalfa that I consider a food plot because it brings deer in from left and right and elk. So you can go as big as you'd like, but for management and for economics, if you don't have any other money coming off of that, other than you just want a plot for your deer and to hopefully get a shot at a deer over that plot, or, 1 acre is pretty good size. I know a lot of guys that will look and say, well, an acre, this has got to be an acre. Well, when you go map something, an acre is quite big. So I've had some guys got very exuberant and went with a 2 acre patch, and it gets big. It gets a little costly, but it worked for him. So, the person that's hunting and knows the ground knows the best, but I would say I usually go from 50 foot by 50 foot all the way up to 1 acre and, per plot.
Okay.
Now you could have 7 50 by 50 plots or 7 1 acre plots, spread out across the property too. But as one plot, that's what my guidelines usually kind of are.
Okay. Gotcha. So looking at your product line, what are the products or what are the plants that are mixed into these products, and what are they for? When should you pick one over the other? Is there some specialty stuff that we should consider?
Yeah, our mainstream food plots, there's 3 of them right now with 2 that are in the works for the western part of the geography that we work with. But we'll also go east depending on the situation too. So, but the 3 that we have now, take for instance our Plot 365, all pretty much legume species in there. And those are built for, they're kind of our marathon plot. Our Plot 365 is meant to sustain a deer herd for, 6 seasons. Once you get to the 6th season, you should probably tear it up and look at something else. But hopefully you get a good established Plot 365, and it could be there every year for your deer for up to 6 years. It usually takes 2 years to get it good and established. A lot of people think, well, I plant it 1 year and in spring it should look immaculate. But annual or perennial plots are a labor of love. You got to put a lot into them to make them what you want. So Plot 365, it could be, is our most versatile in my opinion when it comes to plots, but it's probably the most labor intensive when you want to have a sustained 6 years. Our annuals, like our brassica mix, is it comes up really well. It's not as labor intensive. You're going to get a lot more of our brassicas and chicory and stuff in there. There's some hybrid brassicas in there that are very palatable for deer. There's also ryegrass in there to give it a good nurse crop. And a lot of people say, well, I don't like ryegrass. It's not very nutritious, but our main reason to have the ryegrass in there is to get something to green up, protect against soil erosion, protect against the heat a little bit, give a little shade, and a little bit of competition for the brassicas to get moving and get taller. And, we've got different hybrids of radishes in there that work well in pretty much all soils in what we call kind of the deer corridor, kind of Nebraska, Iowa east. And so those are, like I said, good for spring or fall planting. Then our third mainstream plot is kind of what we kind of consider our screening product, but also is, it's kind of got we talked about their bedroom and their kitchen in one, and that's what our sanctuary is. Guys use it for a food plot, and they also use it for kind of for their own planning when it comes to deer hunting. So as we all know, what screens do is you could put those up. It's got Egyptian wheatgrass in there that it puts up a really nice barrier between you and the deer if you're walking into a blind. If you want to brush in, if you want to have a pop-up blind and you plant sanctuary and let it come up, you can go in there, cut some of it down, get your blind in there. And it's kind of it's kind of an all-purpose summer blend. So even if somebody wanted to do sanctuary as a bedding plot, and that's what we call it because it is truly a bedding plot. It's got really good grass species that are soft, and deer love to bed down in them. They've got clover, and it's got chicory in it for a food source while they're in there. It keeps them a little more at ease. And you could use that if you don't have a bedding area on your property. You could do a 1 acre bedding area or a half an acre bedding area with our sanctuary. But it's like dual purpose. You could use it for that, or use it to what we've done in the past is on our way into our stands, if there's any areas the deer possibly could be as we're walking in or out, we'll plant, a 10 foot swath, 100 yards long. That way it's good and 6 or 7 foot tall or 8 foot tall. By the time we're going in there in September and October and starting to hunt these deer, it kind of gives us a screen to not get detected as we're going into that stand.
Gotcha.
So,
all right. So you can kind of use it as a blind of sorts.
Correct. Yep.
Very cool.
But it is a great bedding plot as well. So
gotcha. Dusty, is there anything else that you want to ask of Eric and Jason?
Yeah, Eric and Jason, where can we find Rackology if we're a customer looking to purchase?
Well, I mean, probably the best bet as far as shipping wise would be on the Cabela's.com. If you're an industry insider, a guide, or an outfitter or something like that, Guide Fitter offers a discount on our products, and I know their shipping is really reasonable just because they ship so much. And then, there's always our website, contacting us directly. But I'd say for the most part, Cabela's.com is probably our largest seller to date.
And also, if you're on our website and you look down at the different states, you could find a soon-to-be updated list of where you could find it from independent dealers as well on Rackology LLC or Rackology.org. Sorry, but
very good.
One thing I didn't know if Jay, if you're going to get into this, but we've got a couple new blends. I talked about blends that are going west.
Yes,
I just have a little bit on that, but I didn't want to jump the gun or get the cart ahead of the horse here.
Yeah, I know you said you had some stuff in development, and I think we should definitely talk about that now if it's something that's going to be coming out fairly soon. I'd like to hear about the development of it. So what else do you have in the works? I know you talked about some Western stuff, some drier climate type seed blends.
Well, and we've been working with some partners here pretty closely. We're pretty excited about it. They're really excited about it. And it's going to be out this spring. We're going to have some testing of it. It won't be available. Well, I take that back. We want to get it out there, get some testing done. I know it'll do well. It's just a matter of getting all our ducks in a row on the bagging process and everything, the logistics.
It'll be
out
available.
this spring.
It'll probably be in white. It'll probably just be in white bags, our generic bags this spring.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But what it is we and Nebraska is kind of what I consider the gateway to the West. We get a lot of Western hunters in Western Nebraska that are interested in mule deer, and then a lot of whitetail in Western Nebraska, Colorado, Wyoming, also elk herds. They're interested on, hey, we've had really good luck with our brassica blends over there in Plot 365, but we wanted to work with these guys to come up and get them something that's going to work well in their area. And we're talking Western Nebraska, Colorado, and Wyoming, and even into Utah and some of these areas. Montana is another big one. And in some of those Western states, you got to watch, what's in the blend, because it definitely, some of the restrictions on cattle grazing, you got to make sure it's safe for cattle, for horses, whatever it might be out there. So we've done all that research. We've come up with a blend, and what we have also, you got to have, and like Jason alluded to earlier, you got to have the right ratios, because one of the products we have in there that's going to be dynamite doesn't like a lot of competition of the wrong sort. So it's got to be blended precisely. In the last 2 years, we've been doing research, and other guys have been doing research on the cattle side on what the rate should be, and we've come up with one that I think is going to work really well for food plots. If for some reason the cattle get into it, some of the when you start talking Montana, you're talking other wild species that you don't want to hurt or hinder. So we came up with a really, really good blend. It's going to go west because it's very, very drought tolerant. And you need that going west, where, last year they were fortunate, caught some rain, but every year is not like that. It's all non-invasive. It does very well in the soils that are out west. When you talk about pHs, it outperforms a lot of other legumes that are out there. It's a great species,
and it'll work around here too.
Yes, and then we can go all the way into Iowa. The only consideration you really want to watch is on poorly drained areas. If water sets, it's susceptible, to. And the only thing it's Achilles' heel is, some of the crown and root rot. So you want to make sure and that's why it's so good on dry land. But on irrigated, you want to make sure that's an area that doesn't get an overabundance of rain. But we're in an arid sub-arid area here in Nebraska. It'll work well here, Texas, Oklahoma, and some of those areas too. So we're really excited about it because I think it could go east to west pretty well. and it is going to be a perennial. So it's something that's going to be hopefully last again like 365, 3 to 6 years. It's something that could be interseeded every year. So I think it's very exciting, and I can't wait for it to get done and priced and ready to rock and roll, because I think it's going to be a heavy hitter going west, because I don't think a lot of focus have been on some of these guys that might want to. You look at how much work some of these elk guys do on private ground. I mean, you can't be doing this on public ground, in my opinion, but this is something that could get them to, maybe better pattern some of the elk herds that are up there, even though they're a little more nomadic and travel a lot further. But for mule deer and for western whitetails, I think it's going to be a fantastic plot. And we're going to have 2 different variants of it, depending on what they want. And then also we're going to have a new updated fertilizer for these plots that are going out west, because they are going to need a little bit more different things than what is in our fertilizer, food plot fertilizer right now. So going with that, we're going to have a doctored up fertilizer food plot for that segment. So
gotcha.
I think it's going to be pretty interesting. So, I mean, I'm sure social media will start posting things about it when everything gets a little closer.
Sure. Do you have names for these products yet, or are you still working on it?
Still working on it right now. We, definitely, it's going to be a Western blend, so it's going to be something that's evokes that spirit. But we haven't formally agreed on a name yet, but I'm sure that's soon to come.
Okay. And then finally, guys, if we've created more questions than answers, or people want just to have a follow-up question to the things we've discussed here today, how do they reach out to you individually if they have questions about your product?
Well, a good way, like Jason said, a good way to do it is email Rackology LLC@gmail.com. That way Jason or I can both see it and know which direction the question is, so one of us can answer it. And another way, it's a little tougher to see all the time, but on our Facebook site or Instagram. But I would say any in-depth question should be emailed and followed up maybe with a phone call if we need to be.
Gotcha. All right. Very good. Well, guys, I got to say, this has been awesome. I mean, we've touched on all kinds of details about food plots and minerals and deer nutrition, and it exceeded my expectations. And you guys always do that. You're smart guys, you're scientists. It's always just fascinating to learn about things that I just don't hear about every day where I live. Dusty probably is overly familiar with all this stuff, but I think there are people all around the world that are in our country that really want to hear more about this stuff. So I appreciate you taking the time and just going through every little nook and cranny that we could think of.
Yeah, we sure appreciate you having us on.
Thanks to Jason and Eric for coming on the show. We've had them on the show before. We've done some live shows with them and talking about more of their supplements. This is the first time we've had them on the show to really discuss in detail both the products that they offer for seeds and what they have coming out in the future for those drier areas out west. The guys are really brilliant. They're smart. They're scientists. They understand what's going on. They developed this formula themselves. So I can't help but think that everything that they put into it means something. They're not just trying to sell a bag of goodies. They're trying to sell you something high quality that will help your food plots and will help your deer herd get stronger and healthier, and hopefully give you an edge when it comes to actually putting down the buck you've been looking for. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you? Or you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice. Let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay. I'm Dusty Phillips.
And I'm Jay Scott Ammon. We'll see you next time right here on the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunt Podcast.